What up, nerds? My name's Ryan. I did my HSC in 2019, and in this video, I'm going to go through an essay paragraph that I wrote on Christopher Boone's unique personal voice for the curious incident of the dog in the nighttime. Firstly, I'll go through a series of quotes, and then I'll show you how I utilized them in an example paragraph, and then explain the structure, the techniques, and the generalized thought process that went into writing that paragraph. Now, most people like dogs because they're friendly and offer unconditional love, like this cheeky little boy right here. But that's not the case for Christopher. From this quote, we see that he likes dogs because they're easy to understand, or at least easier to understand than people. You can also see this need to categorize from him, so 4 moods: happy, sad, cross, and concentrating. So he's listing and categorizing the different emotions and states that dogs can exhibit. He feels secure around dogs because you always know what a dog is thinking. It's not a mystery to him. He doesn't have to refer to a chart of diagrams of different facial expressions. He can just tell because their emotional range is pretty limited and the emotions themselves are quite simple. In the next quote, Christopher elaborates saying, "Dogs are faithful and they do not tell lies because they cannot talk." So dogs are faithful and they do not tell lies. This shows his somewhat amplified need for honesty and complete truth in order for trust to develop, in order for him to feel safe around a dog or a person. He needs to know that they are telling the truth fully, which I think everyone has an aspect of that, but it's particularly strong in him. The quote also has an aspect of humor because it says, because they cannot talk. So it's not because they refrain from lying because they are morally upstanding dogs. It's because they are unable to lie. And Christopher sees a reflection of himself in this, as in the next quote he says, "I do not tell lies. I do not tell lies." The first thing that I noticed there is the high modality language being used in the quote, meaning that there is no uncertainty in the meaning of this quote. It's also monosyllabic, which really just serves to make his claim very assertive and straightforward and simple. I do not tell lies. And like I was saying, he sees a reflection of the dog in himself. As we see in this quote, "Mother used to say that this was because I was a good person, but it is not because I am a good person. It is because I can't tell lies." So similar to how the dog is unable to tell lies because it cannot speak, Christopher is unable to tell lies because of the way that his mind works. So an inability to lie because of his divergent mind. So most people would refrain from lying out of a moral conviction, out of a desire to be faithful to those who love you, your family, your friends. You don't want to lie to them, or just anybody really, because it poisons a part of your soul. But I'm not saying that literally, I'm engaging in metaphor. But he doesn't do it for moral reasons. He does it because, similar to the dog, he is incapable of doing so. For a different reason to the dog being incapable of doing so, but an analogous reason. So it's not because he's a good person. It's not because he's a good person, which is very counter to what we would immediately assume if someone told us that they didn't lie. The next quote gives us further insight into the way that Christopher's mind works. At a particular time, at a particular place. The context of this quote is he's saying that if he tries to conjure a bit of imagination about something that didn't occur at a particular time, at a particular place, he gets very nauseous and confused and scared because his mind starts relaying him every possible scenario that fits the criteria. And something that didn't happen at a particular time, at a particular place, can be filled with infinite scenarios. So his mind is just throwing at him this overload of information that he can't deal with. So at a particular time, at a particular place. Contrasted to that of the average person who can probably imagine a scenario that didn't actually happen at a particular time, at a particular place. And in order to do that, we don't have to sift through all the infinite possibilities of something that fulfills that criteria. We can just think of specific cases, but he can't do that. He has to think of the set of all cases. And understandably so, that would be quite overwhelming. More insight into the way that his mind works is seen in this quote. "I doubled 2s in my head because it made me feel calmer. I got to 33,554,432, which is 2 to the power of 25. So doing iterative calculations on a very large scale, right? Like 2 to the power 25 is not an easy task to calculate in your mind. Doing that incredibly tedious and difficult mathematics actually makes him feel calmer, as opposed to the average person, which would forget about being unable to do it in the first place, would recoil in fear at the mere thought of doing such a thing. But it makes him feel calmer. So he feels safe. He feels safe when engaged in a system with logical rules and ordered patterns. And there is literally nothing more logical than basic arithmetic in mathematics. There is nothing more objective than basic math operations, as many people that dislike this subject are well aware of. So again, this 33,540 554,432, 2 to the power of 25. It shows the nature of his intelligence. So he's clearly not emotionally or socially intelligent. It's like all of that brain power has been funneled purely into this logical and mathematical sort of intelligence. So logical / mathematical. And this is exactly what you see with people on the autism spectrum. So one way to think about how autism works, and this isn't just me saying this, I'll link the person in the description who I'm loosely paraphrasing here. But one way to conceptualize what autism is it's a very extreme end of certain masculine traits. And I'm not saying exclusively male and female, I'm saying masculine and feminine. The feminine can be partially described as a desire to empathize and understand the emotions of another person and respond to it appropriately. And masculinity can partially be defined as a desire to understand the nature of the variables which govern the behavior of a system. And what some people describe aspects of autism as an extreme amplification of those particular masculine traits and an extreme reduction in those feminine traits. So he's not at all able or interested in understanding the emotions of another person, but he is extremely interested in understanding the variables that govern the behavior of a system, i.e. mathematics is like the cookie cutter perfect example of such a thing. He also lacks any clear verbal filter. A verbal filter in the sense that he lacks an understanding of politeness, of decorum, of etiquette. He doesn't fully conceptualize what would be acceptable in various social settings. And that's perfectly evident in this quote, where he says, "All the other children at my school are stupid, except I'm not meant to call them stupid, even though this is what they are." So he's certainly being honest to what he thinks. All the other children at my school are stupid, but he lacks the innate understanding and the innate hesitation that one might feel when saying that to another person's face, right? He lacks an understanding of how another person would respond to that emotionally if you just call another person stupid, let alone a whole group of students. And we can tell that he doesn't understand the fact that this is rather socially unacceptable because he says, except I'm not meant to call them stupid. And that kind of implies that he probably did at one point, and then someone, probably his mother or his father, said, or maybe one of the teachers at the school said, hey, you're not allowed to say that. This is why. But that's not as relevant as whatever the truth is for Christopher, because he says, even though this is what they are. And that kind of implies that he'd rather just say what he thinks. He'd rather just say the truth. And that's very often noble in many circumstances. But when it's something so frivolous as calling a group of special needs students stupid, obviously that would not be socially acceptable and is completely lacking in any sort of consideration for the other person's emotions. But he's not doing it intentionally. He just doesn't know. He just doesn't know. And then I'll finish it off with this very heartwarming quote upon reflection, I think. And he says, everyone has special needs. And it's this kind of recognition that everyone has something that another person will consider a flaw. Everyone has traits that don't gel well with society. And as a result, everyone needs to be given some slack from time to time because they're not perfect, and neither is he. And this is kind of a recognition of it. Maybe not perfect, but everyone is unique in some way. Everyone has some traits and attributes that are likely to cause dissonance in a given situation. And so how did I use this in an example paragraph? Well, I'll read it to you now, and then I'll explain the structure, the techniques, and the generalized thought process that went into writing it. Unique personal voices in literature have the ability to represent new perspectives and explore interesting ideas. Haddon's novel achieves this through the characterization of the protagonist and narrator, Christopher Boone. Christopher is a 15-year-old boy with a unique perspective on the world. Although it is only alluded to within the book, Christopher exhibits characteristics associated with Asperger's syndrome and the autism spectrum. This is exemplified by various features of his, including his inability to understand and interpret human emotions, his need for logic and order, and his unfiltered speech. For example, Christopher states, "I like dogs. You always know what a dog is thinking. It has 4 moods: happy, sad, cross, and concentrating." The listing of emotions shows Christopher's need to categorize and define in order to understand. Most people like dogs fundamentally because they're friendly and give unconditional love. However, Christopher likes them because they are easier to understand. This is because of their limited emotional range. He goes on to say that dogs are faithful and they do not tell lies because they cannot talk. This further exhibits a need for truth and honesty in order for trust to develop. He also states, "I do not tell lies." High modality language shows the assertiveness of his claims. "Mother used to say that this was because I was a good person. But it is not because I am a good person, it is because I can't tell lies." Christopher's inability to lie stems from the way his mind processes and conceptualizes information. For example, if he thinks of something that didn't occur at a particular time and a particular place, his mind then thinks about the infinitely many possibilities and he begins to feel sick. Contrasted to that of the average person, Christopher is honest not for moral reasons, but rather because he is simply unable to lie. Furthermore, Christopher feels most comfortable in an environment of logical thinking and ordered patterns. This is clearly evidenced by his strong ability and passion for mathematics. After discovering that his father had lied to him, Christopher says, "I doubled 2's in my head because it made me feel calmer. I got to 33,554,432, which is 2 to the power of 25. The fact that iteratively multiplying large numbers in his head is actually calming to him demonstrates his divergence from the average person and allows the responder to better appreciate the nature of his intelligence. It is not social or emotional intelligence that he possesses, but rather logical and mathematical. He sees the world in patterns, and the most consistent logical pattern is that of numbers. Christopher also differs through his lack of verbal filter. He states, "All the other children at my school are stupid, except I'm not meant to call them stupid even though this is what they are." His words come from a place of honesty and are not influenced by emotions. The first-person perspective of his writing allows for a reliable, however unconventional, style of narration. The very nature of the autistic spectrum means that there is no clear distinction between who is and who isn't autistic. This key idea is indirectly represented through the text as Christopher states, "Everyone has special needs." The novel allows for the readers to gain a better understanding of people who exhibit traits of autism, possibly a friend, family member, or even themselves. All right, so that's how I integrated the quotes into, this is all one paragraph, by the way. I put the spaces there for the sake of clarity, but it's got a pretty standard structure. So we have an introduction here where we're given an idea/conceptual statement. So unique personal voices in literature have the ability to represent new perspectives and explore interesting ideas. There is nothing in that introductory statement that is contingent upon the curious incident of the dog in the nighttime existing as a text. It is an idea that exists in the wider world. And you always start your essay body paragraphs with a idea that exists in the wider world. The next sentence is an actual link to the text. Haddon's novel achieves this through the characterization of the protagonist and narrator Christopher Boone. So this is a link to the text being the curious incident of the dog in the nighttime. The next section is giving some context, kind of like giving a thesis as well. So Christopher is a 15-year-old boy with a unique perspective on the world. Although it is only alluding to within the book, Christopher exhibits characteristics associated with Asperger's syndrome and the autism spectrum. Asperger's syndrome and the autism spectrum. And then we set up, Christopher is a 15-year-old boy, blah, 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 Asperger's syndrome, autism spectrum. It gives context to what the character is and provides the reader a bit of an understanding of why he might be acting in the following ways. I also use this section of the paragraph to set up the rest of the paragraph. So the rest of the paragraph is mainly this section here, and this section here. Those are the three meaty parts of the paragraph. They have most of the substance. And the way that I set the reader up for that is by saying, this is exemplified by various features of his, including his inability to understand and interpret human emotions. That's the next section. So unable to understand emotion. Again, I set up the next section after that by saying his need for logic/order, which is entirely what this section is. So need for logic/order. And the third main section, his unfiltered speech, which is this final, well, not final, but the final substantive section of the paragraph. So lack of verbal filter. This last section is a conclusion, and this section, I don't really know why I put it in there, but it's just some filler. It's a filler before the conclusion. I could probably take that out, but the very nature of the autism spectrum means that there is no clear distinction between who is and who isn't autistic. That's an interesting idea. I probably put it in there just to make the markers think I was sophisticated. Anyway, so now I'll just highlight some of the techniques in each section. So for the "I like dogs" quote, we have listing as a technique, and that has the effect of showing Christopher's need to categorize and define in order to understand. The "dogs are faithful" quote has the effect of exhibiting Christopher's need for truth and honesty in order to trust, in order to feel safe. He also states, "I do not tell lies," so high modality language is a very clear technique used there. And this has the effect of showing the assertiveness of his claims. The effect of the "mother thinks I'm a good person" quote is that we see how his mind is divergent. And similarly, we see that again at a particular time, at a particular place quote. The "I doubled 2's in my head" quote shows that again, shows his divergence from the quote-unquote average person and demonstrates his logical and mathematical intelligence as opposed to any social or emotional intelligence. And the "all the other children are stupid" quote is written in first person, and it emphasizes his reliable and honest but unconventional style of narration, and of course shows his lack of verbal filter. And then the last two sections are kind of frivolous. So that's it for this video. I have another video on the curious incident of the dog in the nighttime, about the subversion of novelistic convention. Click the link in the middle of the screen to be taken to that. Good luck, and I'll see you in the next video.